all the cool kids. The nerds didn't watch it. They just weren't into it. And it's different now. Probably the kids growing up, it's the nerds who watch it and the cool kids slag it off. And in some ways, I can't say I blame them. I don't think growing up as a kid, I would be hooked in the shit that they're showing you now. I mean, it's just unreal. I mean, and just going back to those times, going back to, watching TLC, the SummerSlam one, I mean, that was probably for me. I think it was the moment where Matt Hardy gets pushed, shoved off the ladder, then he goes right crashing through the table. That was probably the ultimate markout moment for me. I don't think I ever had another markout moment like that. I was just like, wow, like watching that as a 10-year-old kid. And yeah, I mean, those were good times. And first ever pay per view I saw properly, that was WrestleMania 15. That was Raw Austin main event. And those were just good times, man. Those were good times to be watching wrestling as a kid. And I'll tell you something else. When you came to 2001, and at that point, WCW had been bought. Vince bought his own competition. And then a few months later down the line, they have the invasion angle. Now, a lot of people shit on the invasion angle, but listen, when you're 9 years old, or 9 or 10, whatever it is, and you're watching this, and you see these WCW wrestlers and ECW wrestlers that you know a little about, or you've seen them a bit on TV, and all of a sudden they're showing up on WWF. That's the coolest shit ever. It really is. So people can shit on that angle all they want, but I'll tell you something, it's a lot better than the shit that they're doing right now in WWE. I would say the invasion that invasion angle was better than Nexus. That invasion angle was better than a lot of shit that WWE's put out in the past. You could say 10 to 12 years. Overall, I thought it was good. And yes, people can say, oh, well, they didn't get this guy, they didn't get that guy. But at the end of the day, it was what it was. A lot of these guys had that contract with Turner. And it didn't expire till what? Early 2002, in some cases late 2002. They were just going to sit home and take the money. Can't say I blamed them. So it was what it was. But, ultimately, Invasion Angle ended. And then, we get on to the WWE. It became WWE in 2002. There was the name change. And at that point, things started to change. Let's just let's be honest, that it wasn't the Attitude Era anymore. And, Austin walked. He had had enough. He thought the creative was shit. Can't say I blamed them. It was shit, And, they wanted Austin to job to Lesnar. I think it was like a 3-minute deal. And this is weird as well. This is like, they wanted Austin to job to Lesnar. And this was just like a week after he won a match against Ric Flair. And the stipulation was the loser has to become the personal assistant to the winner for like a month or whatever. And I can remember because this storyline ends up playing out in the video game. Was it SmackDown? Oh, was it Know Your Role? I think the game was. So it's weird that, Flair's is going to be his personal assistant, but yet Austin would still end up doing the job in a 3 minutes to Brock Lesnar. Wow, I mean, yeah. That creative was shit. I mean, I can't blame Austin for walking. And at that point, Rock, he took a break after SummerSlam. I'm guessing at that point he was, filming another movie. I don't know I can't remember what one it would have been at the time. But, things were starting to change. This was now the Ruthless Aggression era. You had Lesnar, you had Cena, you had Orton. And I was a fan of all those guys. I mean, I was a huge Randy Orton mark back in the day. And a fairly big Cena mark as well. But in the end, we just have to tell it like it is. Those guys weren't Austin and Rock. Hell, they weren't maybe even Undertaker, Triple H. I mean, just not the same when it came to the level of, when it came to being entertaining, when it came just that star power. I mean, to me, they're not on those guys' level that I talked about. Of course, when WWE will do these countdowns and all that crap, they'll make it out like they're on the same level, if not higher. But come on, we know at that point, 2002, that's when things started to go downhill. The ratings went downhill. But at that point, I'm still a fan of wrestling. I was hooked. I guess I was hooked from going back to the summer of 2000. I was just hooked as a fan, and a lot of that might have been down to growing up as a kid. I wasn't really family wasn't that well off. We didn't have Sky, so I wasn't able to always watch. I couldn't watch Raw and SmackDown or the pay per views. So that might have played a part in my attachment to wrestling, being more attached to it than other kids were. To the kids that had Sky. I don't know, but it is what it is. That's just the cards I was dealt with in life. You know what I mean? I was hooked. And maybe just with some people, once they're hooked, and that's that. But I stayed I'm still a fan of wrestling, and then WWE starts coming up to Scotland, and then had a show 2003. The AACC, and it was overall a decent show. And Lesnar, it was Lesnar big show main event, nothing special, but Lesnar huge pop, and overall it was good. And I had shows up until 2010, once a year pretty much, sometimes twice a year. And I was there for every show. Have been from every show from 2003 going up to late 2019, but overall, for me, wrestling has just gone downhill. I mean, and to me, it just sucks certain people that could have been stars, but they didn't end up being stars because of bullshit politics. The three guys. I mean, I'll name the three guys I think who had it, who could have been stars. They could have at least had a good run with the Intercontinental title, that the US title, had a run with the World title even. One, I would say Kenny Dykstra. Kenny from the Spirit Squad, but he had it. I mean, come on, he was tall, real tall guy, athletic. Okay, he maybe could have had a bit more charisma and personality, but he had that kind of like that cocky heel, like he's a dick kind of thing, and that works. That works for being a heel, and he had it in my book. And another guy I would say is probably Alex Riley. I mean, Alex Riley's another one. Had it. He had it, and it's funny because I think it applies to Kenny Dykstra as well. It was the Cena thing, man. Cena fucked them over, and Cena, the politics, and I think with Dykstra, yeah, basically, Kenny Dykstra was with Mickey James at the time, and then they had an affair. Cena and Mickey James had an affair, and